Bitcoin is climbing and some Coinbase news just dropped. Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and joining me are my co-hosts, CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Capital Markets, Lawrence Lewitinn, and Managing Director of International Content, Emily Parker. Good morning, you two. I'm almost getting those new titles down.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, so let's get started. Checking in on Bitcoin really quickly. The XBX Bitcoin price trading at $51,494. Bitcoin is up almost 4% in the past 24 hours. And the ETX Ether price also now trading at $16.52. Ether is also up according to Trade Block data, the most reliable reference price for institutions since 2014, with billions in assets under management benchmarked against it. But looking at our top story, Coinbase is one step closer to officially becoming a publicly traded company. The crypto exchange's Form S-1 are now live for the first public view of its financials on the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission's website. The company is expected to go public at a $100 billion valuation. Joining us now with more is CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Policy and Regulation, Nick Day, who's also the editor of CoinDesk's The State of Crypto newsletter. Good morning, Nick.
Hey, good morning.
All right, so big news. What do we know so far? What numbers stick out to you in this S-1 filing from Coinbase that's now public?
Yeah, so the S-1 dropped this morning about an hour and a half ago, and in it, Coinbase says that in 2020, I think the biggest numbers, the most interesting numbers are it generated a revenue of 1.3 billion in 2020 and a net profit of 322 million last year. This is up from a loss of $30 million in 2019. So 2020 was a good year for Coinbase.
Hey, so Nick, we see some pretty interesting growth numbers, right? When we look at trading volume, when we look at assets, so give us a little bit of sense of that.
Yeah, so according to the S1, the trading volume last year was over $190 billion, which is fairly massive. This is up from 2019 as well. I'm not sure how much of this is part of the Bitcoin price rise, or the overall market rise rather, but I have to imagine it's, a lot of it is just adding new customers and onboarding folks for here.
We also learned some numbers from Armstrong and his compensation. What do we know about that?
So he is making $60 million. That's including both direct compensation as well as stock options. He is getting some portion through these options. So he's having a good year.
He's having a good year.
So Nick, Nick, not so long ago, Coinbase had a massive controversy about diversity. Brian Armstrong issued a memo saying that the company had a political mission and basically barring certain types of political discussions at work and sparking a whole media firestorm. Does any of this matter? Or is this just going to kind of be a blip on the radar in the larger Coinbase story?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's I haven't seen anything so far to suggest that they're facing a immense, long, widespread backlash. There are definitely a lot of folks who are trying to get more information out of Coinbase, and I think Coinbase, even seeking to address some of these concerns. Yesterday, they published a blog post announcing that it would remain a remote-first company and saying that, among other things, this would help them attract a broader, more diverse talent group because they don't have to necessarily force people, or hire people who can, afford to live in San Francisco or afford to move to San Francisco. That being said, it's unclear to me whether or not that's a huge consideration for the folks who are looking to trade Coinbase stock. Its valuation has jumped week to week. Our colleague Ian Allison reported that 2 weeks ago, Coinbase was trading at a valuation of 77 billion. That jumped, as Christine said, to 100 billion last week. So clearly there is a lot of interest in Coinbase right now.
So Nick, what are the next steps for Coinbase right now? They're not officially an IPO, according to SEC, they're not S1 effective. The S1 is not effective right now. So what are the next steps for them?
Yeah, so this has been a just kind of a procedural step. Coinbase announced, I believe it was in mid-December, that they had filed a confidential S1, meaning it was filed but not public. No one could see it. No one could, know what was in it. Now that it's public, everyone has a chance to look through and see, whether or not Coinbase's financials make sense and whether or not the valuation makes sense for them. The SEC will, at some point in the next, month or two, most likely make a determination and either say, yes, we're going to deem this effective or not. If they've gotten to this point, my personal guess, and this is just purely uneducated speculation, is they will deem it effective. That'll happen in the next month or two, at which point Coinbase will, they're probably going to go live, I would imagine, very short order, and they're going to directly list on NASDAQ. So they're not going through an initial public offering process. They're just going to list their stock and let people trade.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Nick, for giving us the latest on Coinbase.
Thank you.
All right, that was CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Policy and Regulation, Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com. Meanwhile, quantitative trading firm Alameda Research is leading a $40 million round to create the Robinhood of decentralized finance. That is a prime brokerage called Oxygen that will make investing in DeFi more accessible and user-friendly to the masses. Joining us now to discuss is Sam Bankman-Fried, CEO of Alameda Research, as well as crypto exchange FTX in Hong Kong. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good to have you, Sam. Sam, you don't sleep. When you do, it's on a beanbag with roommates around. You run two major crypto firms with billions in volume and assets under management, and now looking to open your third. You're 28 years old. First of all, get some sleep. And second of all, tell us your vision for this new project you have ahead.
We'll see about that first one. But on the second topic, one of the dominant trends of 2020 in crypto, but really just in the world, was massive growth in demand for retail financial access. And, Robinhood was maybe company of the year from a sort of, global recognition standpoint. And, we're seeing that continue. Robinhood itself obviously has had a little bit of a tough 2021 so far. But, that just means there's all the more demand for, better and newer ways for people to access, financial investing and trading, especially in a convenient mobile-first world. And so I think that that's, something that we're looking to target from a few different angles. And one of the big ones, which you brought up, is Oxygen. It's a decentralized, you can call it decentralized prime brokerage. You can call it sort of an extension of borrow lending. But basically what it is, build as comprehensive of a financial suite as you can on chain, and then build a really easy access point to it for millions of users. And so the Maps.me application, which has north of 100 million downloads, is going to be adding that in for all of its users over the rest of the year. So really excited to see those roll out. And it mirrors something that we've been doing on the FTX side as well, with rolling out trading and investing through Blockfolio.
So one of the dangers of Robinhood is that exactly kind of what you just said. It's a very easy on-ramp to something that actually is quite complicated behind the scenes. And that's been one of the criticisms, right? Is that people are sort of coming and they're trading and they're getting it over their heads because it has like this sort of video game-like feel. Is there any danger that your project will actually have that even magnified because DeFi is even more complicated and you'll kind of have these new users coming in and have this like really easy, accessible platform, but not actually know what they're investing in and, find themselves facing big losses? And how do you manage that risk?
Right, totally hear you. And I mean, that is always a worry. And I think that there's a fine line between an investing app which is really well designed and one that's just so well designed that it becomes, source of enjoyment, outside of the financial aspect. And certainly you've seen COVID heighten that with, frankly, a lot of people bored at home. I think that the biggest pieces of this, and this is something that's been beat into our head again and again and again over the last few years, is always making it especially just looking at sort of, the access points people have, making it as intuitive as possible what's going on, and making the explainers as clear as possible. One of the things that I think we found, which was sort of surprising, is one thing you could do is take a product and put a ton of like disclaimers in front of it, have pop-ups that say, hey, warning, this is like a weird product. Here's a quiz you have to take to be able to use it. Please read this article, then answer these questions, then click this button. And, and those are the sorts of things which our instinct was like, that's a terrible user experience. Like, you got to do it when you got to do it. But like, boy, like, is that going to be a turnoff for the product? And we were just totally wrong. People love that. And this sort of fit a broader trend of our users, by and large, have really, really appreciated when we put more educational material, more explainers on the products, and just show as much as we can about what's going on, both in front of them and behind the scenes. And, there are certainly a lot of users that just want things abstracted away as much as possible, but a surprising number of people actually want to have access to as much information as they can at their fingertips, and as much, explanation and help as they can. And, especially we get to a world where social media, frankly, is playing an enormous role. It's what people say online about these things is going to matter an enormous amount. And all you have to do is look at the Apple Store ratings of the Robinhood app and what happened to them over the first, few months of 2021 to see that.
And Sam, I want to get to the maps component in a bit, but one question I have, of course, given today's news, you guys have an exchange token. It's the valuation is somewhere around $3 billion or so. BNB's is about $40 billion. So are owners getting anything akin to equity? And how much should Coinbase be valued, given what we see in the exchange token market? Does $100 billion sound like too much or too little? Where do you fall on that? And how does it compare with your exchange token?
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, you won't be shocked to hear that that's a conversation we've had a lot internally recently. And I guess addressing the first point. Oh,
are you looking to go public?
We'd be crazy not to be looking into what that would entail. It's not something that I sort of see imminently, but it's, I think a lot of players in the crypto space right now are at least trying to understand what's involved in that process. I think that the Coinbase valuation is certainly one driver of that. The FTT holders are not getting equity. They're not getting any management. It was a way to give people some involvement in the FTX ecosystem, and a way that was easy, and a way that frankly works a lot better for global users of the platform than NASDAQ does, but it's obviously a lot less accessible for a different class of investors, and in particular for U.S. financial institutions. And so when I look at the valuations, it's interesting. So one thing is, you guys talked about Coinbase's financials for 2020, and they're sort of an interesting set of financials. And I think on the back of that, you would maybe project a 20 billion valuation or something. I'm making that up, right? But if you say, look, it's a fintech company, it's got was it 1.3 of revenue, 300 of profit, maybe that's sort of it's sort of DraftKings space of numbers, and I think you would put it maybe in the 20 range, but. I don't know. I don't know if you have their early 2021 financials. If you've seen what's happened in January and February, and I obviously don't have their financials, but some of their numbers are public. It might be quite a bit higher, and so I'd be super interested to see what they're projecting this year. Volume's up a lot, and it's going to be really interesting to see what numbers they release about those, because they have a really weird business model. If you haven't seen it before, it's FTX's business model, totally transparent. We make about 2 basis points on our trades. Sometimes it's 1.5, sometimes it's 3, whatever. And you can just our volume's public. And okay, you're already 80% of the way there. Coinbase does not do that. Coinbase makes, I'm ballparking, 10 basis points, 0.1% on all trades on their website. They make at least 10 times that on their mobile app. Their mobile app charges really egregious fees. They charge $1 on every trade, even if it's a $7 trade. So when you look at their growth this year, and what valuation that should imply. The really core underlying question is how much of that growth is them charging 5% to retail users on their mobile app, and how much is that them charging 5 basis points to market makers on their on their exchange. And you can't tell that apart just by looking at their headline volume numbers. So really interested to see how that revenue comes in. And I think if it comes in at massively higher than what you saw in 2020, then look, 100 billion is not crazy. I think if it were coming in at 2020 levels, yeah, that seems crazy. With the one last caveat that, I mean, Tesla builds great electric cars, but they have an even better product, which is the TSLA stock. And boy, is that something there's a lot of demand for right now. I think Coinbase is probably looking at markets and think they might have a shot. Like, well-known U.S. crypto exchange goes public 2021. It's a pretty good environment for it.
Can you just tell us a little bit about FTX's user base? My understanding is that you're quite popular in China. What percentage of your users, just ballpark, would you say come from mainland China?
Yeah, I think it's so if you weight by number of users, you get pretty weird results. It's easy to run a campaign where you pay people a little deposit bonus for signing up, and then you like pretty quickly just have another 20,000 users who are never going to use your platform. So you get wacky things if you do that. But if you weight by volume, which is I think like the right thing to do. And I'm going to throw out some companies where it's a little bit hard to classify their country. You have people with employees in one country, a headquarters in another, incorporation in a third, and they're sort of global. Greater China, I think it's one of the large regions, but it's not a dominant one. It's under 50%. And so we're not nearly as China heavy as Huobi, OKEx, or Binance are. We're also obviously not nearly as Western heavy as like Coinbase is. We sort of straddle the line there.
Hey, so Sam, just getting it real quick back on the issue of the maps, the integration.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little more about, exactly how do you guys integrate maps with DeFi? DeFi is as far from geolocation as you could possibly get. So
right.
This is old technology and new technology, right? So What are you guys doing?
Yeah, so there's sort of, I would say, 3 core integrations here. One of them, which is I think a big one, but kind of like the dumb, automatic one, is like, I don't know, they both have users. But let's put that aside for a sec, although not quite forget about it. The 2 big ways that actually has some synergy there. One of them is that Maps.me in particular has a lot of global travelers. It's much less like, oh, do you remember the name of that restaurant that opened up 3 blocks away? And it's much more used for people, people from France who are vacationing in Italy. And because of this, there's a lot of cross-border payments that are not running through the app, but are originated by it. Things like going to book train tickets, book hotel stays, and frankly, like pay for things in a foreign country. And, payments in general are a pretty ugly area of the world right now. You lose 5% immediately. And that's if you're lucky to a credit card. If you're going cross-border and using a booking website, that gets up to 20-30% of the actual, revenue that the hotel ultimately sees that goes to these middlemen in the way. And that's a pretty big loss, and it can be a big hassle. I mean, banks are not always cooperative here. So there's a pretty big area to just improve the global payments infrastructure and to not have to make people leave the app and go to 4 different apps, to serve, they go to their like banking app, and then they go to some booking app and some currency conversion app, and instead just have it, one click all within the app, built-in payments. And then this leads into the sort of the other side of this, which is, in addition, when you already have payments there and you already have users putting assets on the app, people want yield on them. And one thing crypto has shown is it can give a lot higher yield than people can give than banks are giving right now. And so it allows people to keep assets there, get yield lending out in DeFi in the meantime, and then use it for payments when they're traveling. And that's sort of like the core integrated use case there. And then you sort of branch out into, okay, well, restaurants could advertise themselves there. They could connect to customers directly through the app. And and it ultimately serving as a really nice medium for anything which wants to be deployed in that process.
Just one last question quickly, if you could. You say that you practice effective altruism, so you live off whatever living expenses, take the profits of the company, but you give the rest to charity. You gave to the President Biden during his presidential campaign, the second largest donation of that campaign. What is your next big give?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the truth is, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I'm looking into right now. There are some things in everything from, global health, especially, emerging market diseases, some things in animal welfare, some things in AI, some things in politics. And but there's a lot of money sloshing around doing sort of random things in the world in charity. What there's very little of is kind of like strategically deployed reserves, trying to figure out what the most important thing at any given point in time is. And especially if that thing is not necessarily like whatever the Red Cross has most recently tweeted about, which does generally raise quite a bit. And so, we'll see over this next year what comes up. I've been surprised before about what did, but if I had to just wager a guess, I would say, emerging world health, animal welfare, or AI safety related charities.
Fantastic.
Would be
we hear a lot
guesses.
about crypto bros throwing lavish parties and spending it on Lambos, but it's nice to hear you're thinking about some charities and things outside.
We certainly blow our own mini fortune on LaCroix every day, so I don't know if it's.
I enjoy the occasional sparkling water too. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining us.
Of course, thanks for having me.
All right, that was Sam Bankman-Fried, CEO of crypto exchange FTX and quantitative trading firm Alameda Research in Hong Kong. Coming up, crypto markets analysis with Market Gauge Managing Director Michelle Schneider. Welcome back. Checking in on Bitcoin. The XBX Bitcoin price trading right now at about $51,300. Bitcoin is up about 3.5% over the past 24 hours. And the ETX Ether price also now trading at $16.42. Ether is down about 0.3% over the past 24 hours, according to TradeBlock data. All right, joining us now to discuss the crypto markets is Market Gauge Group Managing Director Michelle Schneider in New Mexico. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi. How are you?
Good. Okay, so we'd love to hear your market assessment. We saw a lot of market volatility over the past week. It seems that Bitcoin has now settled around 49,000, 51,000. What's your take?
Well, it's interesting that I thought over the weekend, Elon Musk was basically telling you as loud and clear as he possibly could, it was time to take some profit when it was heading close to 60,000. So I'm hoping a lot of people took heed on that. And I didn't expect it to dip to under 50 like it did. So I'm happy to see it back over. And like you just said, 49 to 50 is a good base. And so as a trader, I like to know what the risk is. And if I can look at 49.50 to hold up, at this point now, really, I'm looking for 52 to clear. And I don't know if I would necessarily be a buyer of Bitcoin personally, because I have clients that are older and they are nervous with that. Plus, they don't want to be up 24 hours like your last guest was. But they're looking more at some of the blockchain companies, and that's what we're looking at right now. So Canaan is my top pick at this moment. We were in Riot, we're out. We're still in a little bit of MicroStrategy, but Canaan Inc. is a company doing blockchain. And right now they're opening up at around $19.60, give or take. If they take out $20, I think you have about a $5 risk. That's what I'd be looking at for us older generation who are afraid of Bitcoin, just putting in a credit card.
That actually leads right to the question I was going to ask you. What kind of investment advice would you give to sort of the boomer generation about crypto? I mean, should they be investing in crypto? How much? And then on the opposite side of that, what about Generation Z? I mean, what do you advise them on crypto investments?
Well, Gen Z and boomers have one major difference besides age, and that is their ability to watch it overnight on their smartphones. And that's really been actually the biggest reason that we've been looking at the alternative ways to invest. We started out in GBTC at the end of last year, and we did really well. That's the OTC Coinbase ETF that you can trade. And of course, with the Coinbase announcing an IPO, that will be something that I think boomers will be really interested in. Otherwise, we've been doing the blockchain companies. Riot and MicroStrategy were the two big ones. And MicroStrategy just announced another $1 billion investment into Bitcoin. And now I did some research last week and I found some other ways to get involved that may not be so volatile. Canaan is kind of volatile, but even some of these smaller banks like Santander Bank and Barclays Bank, they're getting involved. Some of the credit card companies are involved, like American Express. So there are many, many ways that you can look into trading the idea of the bullishness of the alternative currency without actually buying the currency itself. And if you do want to do that, just as I always say, just make sure you have some kind of alert set, even if it wakes you up in the middle of the night, to set some kind of risk parameter. That's really always going to be the sound advice, whether you're a Gen Z or a baby boomer.
Thank you.
Can we hear Lawrence? All right, just one last question, Michelle. Why buy only stocks? And I wonder why not buy into Bitcoin and interact directly with the coin?
Well, basically, as I said, I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm certainly not poo-pooing it. I don't want you to get that impression. But I just know, since the question was towards generationally, and I get to speak to a lot of our clients who are not necessarily Gen Z, but are older people, they're just nervous about it. They don't trust putting their credit card into a company. They're worried about what happens overnight. They're worried about the volatility. They're worried about some of the politicos now getting involved, like Janet Yellen saying that she has concerns about alternative currency. Now there's the big battle between Bill Gates and Elon Musk. So they hear all of this stuff, and just from their own experience, they become more nervous. But again, I would certainly say Bitcoin, especially now, I'm very interested in over 52,000. If somebody want to get involved, no matter what their age, they should. They should. They should just have a mental stop. That's all.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you very much.
All right, that was Market Gauge Group Managing Director Michelle Schneider in New Mexico. Coming up, Craig Wright is suing Bitcoin developers to regain access to stolen Mt. Gox coins. We'll hear all about it. Welcome back. Craig Wright strikes again. The creator of Bitcoin SV, who claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, the pseudonymous creator of Bitcoin, is suing Bitcoin developers for access to a hacked wallet connected to stolen coins on the insolvent Mt. Gox exchange. Joining us now with more is CoinDesk tech reporter Colin Harper. Welcome, Colin.
Thanks, Christine. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Whenever I hear about Craig Wright, his name coming up, it's always attached to a convoluted, complicated story. Untangle that for us, if you will.
Yeah, so this one is probably the strangest one yet. Craig Wright has been embroiled in a lot of lawsuits over the years, and this legal threat, it really kind of takes the cake. So he sent through his law firm, Ontier LLP, yesterday, or this past week, a letter to some Bitcoin core contributors, a letter before action, basically demanding that they give him access to Bitcoin that are in 2 wallets, one of which is connected to the Mt. Gox hack. It contains 79,000 Bitcoin, none of which have moved. And this is a little bit like demanding an Apple or Microsoft software developer that they give you access to the files on someone else's computer. Doesn't make any sense. The developers have no control here. They can't really do anything about this. The only thing that they could do feasibly is fork Bitcoin's chain and then give Craig Wright the keys to the forked chain's Bitcoin, but that wouldn't be Bitcoin anyway. So very odd scenario, very strange demand. I don't really know what his aim is, but the legal letter is out there. It's been sent presumably to some of Core's most prolific contributors, and now we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop to see if we'll actually take this to court.
So basically, if I understand correctly, nothing is likely to come out of this except for like a lot of media drama and maybe some sort of court case. But he's not actually there's very little chance that he will actually get access to these funds.
You got it, Emily. I mean, Stephen Pauly of Anderson Kill yesterday basically said if this were a lawsuit, it would be doomed to failure. Those are his direct quotes. There's again, I can't, for people who don't understand how Bitcoin works, I can't stress how strange this request is. It's akin to, even to give another example, of going to Cash App and telling them that they need to access, the bank account of, a counterparty that stole your cash, right? That's the other thing, is Craig Wright is claiming that these Bitcoin have been stolen. He's never proved that he's owned these wallets in the first place, just like he's never proved that he's owned the wallets that are connected to Satoshi's coins. Very easy. All you would have to do is sign a message from that address.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate spending all this time and energy on these lawsuits that will likely go nowhere. But thank you very much for joining us this morning, Colin.
Thanks.
All right, that was CoinDesk tech reporter Colin Harper. Time now to check in with crypto Twitter with our tweet of the day. Digital art called Crossroad, the one of one from Beeple's first Nifty Gateway drop, has just resold on the secondary market for $6.6 million. History has just been made. Yesterday, Emily, we saw a flying digital Pop-Tart cat sell for $600,000. I think we're in the wrong business.
Absolutely.
All right, that's it for First Mover. Coming up tomorrow is special guest Humian Shek, CEO of MetaLex, a DeFi trading platform. Thank you, Emily Parker, our CoinDesk Managing Director of International Content, and Lawrence Lewitinn, Managing Editor of Global Capital Markets. I'm your host, Christine Lee. I'll be back live at 3 p.m. with All About Bitcoin. Coming up at noon is The Hash. You're watching CoinDesk TV.